And good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another exciting episode of This is a Pin from TD Bank. Yes, we stole it, but at the same time we didn't steal it because it was free. They have a whole bunch of them you can take. TD Bank stands for
Toronto Dominion.
Toronto Dominion. My wife remembers everything. I remember nothing. Now, I'm in here right now because I'm making frosting for my wife for her birthday cake, which was, her birthday was yesterday. The thing is, we didn't have any confectioner sugar, so I'm making confectioner sugar. How do you make confectioner sugar, you might ask? You take granulated sugar and you put it in the blender and you blend it until it's powder. The thing is, the blender was getting really hot, so I had to turn it off and let it sit for a while, so that's what I'm doing. Takes 5 cups confectioner sugar, and I have almost 3 full cups. But then there's that sugar that's sitting in the blender, in the top of the blender, that I'm just letting it sit there to cool off, let the engine, the motor on the thing cool off. It's really a simple recipe though. It only takes a few ingredients. And I know the vanilla beans haven't had time to really haven't had time to really start dissolving into the vodka yet, but it's still had all those other vanilla beans in it. They're still in it. But anyway, so I don't know if I'm going to do it with this video or I'll do it with this video. And I'll let my beautiful wife over here either do a similar video on this channel or on her channel. Whatever she wants to do, if she even wants to do it. So this is to our daughter. You want to know something about our family history? Okay. No, I've never been in the military. Your grandfather was in the Army and in the Navy and in the Canadian Merchant Navy, which in the United States would be the Merchant Marine. He was, why don't I start with the earliest? Let's see. Which side of the family can I go back with certainty the furthest? Your grandmother. Her family moved from France to southeast Virginia to a little place called Deep Creek. Or Great Bridge, excuse me. Great Bridge. Not Grape Ridge, but Great Bridge. Near Norfolk. They arrived in 1632. I used to have a photocopy of a will from somebody in the family, going back to the 16 or 1700s, and it said, like, I give such and such son the land from this stump to this creek to this, that, or whatever. And then to a daughter he gave a cow. Right. Now the thing is, just to have the land to give and to have a cow to give to your children probably meant they were pretty well off. Today we would view wealth in the sense of cash or gold or silver, but you know, then it was your land and your livestock. On that side of the family, as far as I know, there's nobody on your grandmother's side of the family that was career military. But they also, oh my gosh, it's 63 degrees. Wow, that's warm. Anyway, but they served in every war that the United States was in, including the American Revolution. Now, they served on the side of the colonists during the American Revolution, but that split the family. That war split the family, and the family that supported the Crown moved to North Carolina. And there's still family in Virginia, in that little town in Virginia, that have been there since 1632. Not the same individuals, of course, but, you know, it's the same family. I just couldn't imagine that. Then during the War for Confederate Independence, there were 2 or 3. I don't remember now if there were 2 or 3 family members that served in the Confederate Army, but they were drafted. I'll try and provide a link to a story about at least one of them. They were drafted. One was captured by the Confederates after one of the battles for New Bern, North Carolina. He was eventually hanged. And believe it or not, for all my anti-death penalty stance, I actually have very little sympathy for the guy. He was a traitor, you know. But anyway, the family was well-known Yankee lovers, which to me is just a disgrace. But anyway, so go up to the, oh gosh, so your grandmother and uncle, or great uncle, who lives in, your great uncle lives in southwestern Virginia, near the North Carolina frontier, in a little town called Danville. Actually, I don't know if Danville's that small or not, but anyway, they were brought up in rural North Carolina, a little town called Aurora. It's about 500 people. It's always had about 500 people. It grew once by about 1 person when Texas Gulf Sulphur bought a bunch of property around there. And then as the, I don't know, as things went on, and they lost that extra 1 person population.
They kicked the bucket, huh?
Yeah. That used to all be farming land down there, and your great-granddad, my granddad, was a farmer, and he had to stop farming because of Franklin Delano Roosevelt's policies. The government would buy potatoes and other crops, and then dump them in the swamps. You know, there were starving people during the Depression that could have used that food, but they dumped it in the swamps, and they would put like a mark on like the potatoes with like a dye, and they told everybody it was poisonous, so nobody would go out there and try and find the potatoes. Didn't have, there were no laws about drinking and driving. There were no seat belts. You know, I mean, your mother and I remember when seat belts were not mandatory, but unless you had an older car, your car had a seat belt in it. But back in the day, there weren't even seat belts. I don't know if there were even speed limits. But anyway, and then your granddad's side is Irish and Scottish. Your great-grandfather arrived, and your great-grandmother, your great-grandfather was Irish. Your great-grandmother was Scottish, and they moved to Canada. Your great-grandfather served in the Canadian Navy during World War II. Your great-uncle Alf served in the Canadian Navy during World War II, but never went overseas. Your great-uncle Alf's youngest brother was in the RAF. He was in a Handley Page Halifax and was shot down over Germany. He didn't make it. Your grandfather was in the Canadian Merchant Navy during the war, what I call during the war. That's our age. During the war to us is World War II. Even though we weren't alive yet, when your father, lived on Okinawa, our chaplain, oh gosh, what was his name now? Stanford, Mr. Stanford. He's buried at Fort Sam Houston in San Antonio. Only funeral I've ever been to. No, it's not the only funeral. One of two funerals I've been to. But at least I knew him. The other funeral, I didn't know the person. Anyway, Mr. Stanford was just a foot soldier during World War II. He was on Okinawa during the battle for the island. And then, you know, 25 years later or so, 25 years later, he's back on the island. Let me tell you, 25 years, once you get to our age, is nothing. On Okinawa, you know, I lived there during the Vietnam War. And we found helmets, clothing, munitions, landmines, grenades, stuff like that. It was all over the place. We were taught you didn't just go stick your hand under something for a lot of reasons, mainly the snakes. The island is like covered with snakes.
Snake heaven.
Yeah, and there's this one particular snake that exists only on Okinawa, and it's like one of the top 5 deadliest snakes in the world.
Oh my.
Yet the only place I ever saw it was in the Herman Park Zoo in Houston. Isn't that great? Thankfully, though, I never actually saw one when I lived on the island.
But he would have been a nice pet.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Scared of living out of your mother.
Yeah. And we would have snakes in the house. Snakes would get into your house. You know, and there's nothing you can do about it.
Almost like they're coming to visit.
Yeah, you know. But we were taught from a young age you didn't stick your hand under something, because if you did, you might get bit by a snake. There was a place called Suicide Cliff that I used to enjoy going to. There are memorials. You know, most of the people in Okinawa are Buddhist, so they have these memorials for the family members that jumped off the cliffs. And it had a hierarchy, if you will. The higher the cliff, from what I recall, like the Japanese military commanders, that was for them. People of society, higher society, that was for them. The lower cliffs were for people like you and me. You'd still die. Don't think you're going to survive that kind of drop. And there was, my mother bought me VHS tapes. It was 2-pack VHS tapes of World War II in color, and there's some video or some film from Okinawa. I just got a paperback swap notice, but I don't have any credits to get it. Anyway, no, I don't remember what I was going to say. But anyway, so I lived 5 years in Okinawa. I pretty much grew up there. I loved it. I loved Okinawa. As you may know, or may not know, I'm from Spain originally. My native language is Spanish, even though I don't speak it anymore. We had to get out of Spain. Franco was the dictator. He was not a good guy. Things were not the greatest, you know. And then you had the boss blowing up cars.
But if they had messed with an American military person, that would have been a disaster.
No, they didn't care.
Well, I mean, the American military would have went right after them. And they would have had to deal with the American military.
No. Well, anyway, so we escaped Spain. We made it to Germany. We were only in Germany 5 months. So even though, you know, it was like the first good time in my life, so actually Spain was a good time for me too. But Germany, my best friend was Steffi Brown. His parents were from Yugoslavia. Steffi's dad had been a German soldier during the war.
walking on railroad tracks. You might remember this story last year. Passed out on train tracks, but then was pulled to safety by her dog Lily as a train came toward.
Oh gosh.
The dog suffered a broken hip and had to get one of her legs amputated.
Oh. Anyway, your great uncle Alf's youngest brother was shot down over Germany. What if Steffi's dad shot him down? Or what if he was? I don't know what Steffi's dad did. I mean, I don't know what he did during the war. I just know he was a German soldier because he gave my dad, your granddad, his a patch that was like over, I think over this. It was an eagle, and it had a swastika that the eagle had in his talons. Your grandmother and great uncle grew up without electricity, without running water. Eventually they had a battery-powered radio, but radio in those days was only on for a few hours a day, and not necessarily every day, especially not Sunday. They didn't have a TV until many years later, and they didn't have running water until many years later, and they put all that stuff in. You didn't hire somebody to come in and do this kind of stuff. Your great-grandfather went in and built this stuff, put in the pipes, or at least helped the guys. If he had to hire somebody, he helped them. You didn't just hire somebody and have them come in and do something. You did it, or you helped out. Anyway, I got to get back in there and fix your mommy's frosting for her birthday cake. Hopefully you get to see this. By the way, we may get to keep the internet. I called them, talked to them. We may be able to keep the internet. We'll see. Have a great day.